how do you reflect on it, Billy? You've had plenty of time now. I mean, was he better than you actually thought, or was he as good as you knew he'd be?
Do you know what? I've had a load of people say, and you get people say, look, you were doing well, and we had you one up, we had you level, we had you, one down, or two up, or whatever.
What's good, family? Smash the like button and subscribe. So we just heard there from Billy Ho Saunders. And this right here was his long-awaited, or another clip from his long-awaited post-fight interview. Billy Ho Broken Silence Gate is what this was. Now, for you man who haven't heard the full interview, this right here was taken from an 8-minute interview on TalkSport, but this particular clip was right. It's important to know this particular clip was right at the start of this 8-minute interview, and it kind of sets the scene. Well, Billy media trained Billy Ho Saunders tries quite connivingly to set the scene and tries to delude, not even delude. I guess you could say that he tries to bring in other fans into sharing his delusion, or naive or uneducated fans into believing his line of events. Oh yeah, some people had me 2 rounds up, some people had me around. Wow, some people had me 2 rounds up. On what planet were them dons from? From Mars or Venus? Because no one on Earth had you 2 rounds up. Or certainly at least no one on Earth that had you 2 rounds up has been talking about that. How about that? Yeah? No one who is interested in how many points you was or wasn't winning is focused on that now. 6 weeks later. Does that make sense? This wasn't a fight where the amount of rounds you did or didn't win was what was in question. Yeah? Not even a bit. 6 weeks later, and you're talking about how many points people had you allegedly. You're talking about how many points people allegedly had you up. What kind of fight do you think this was, Billy? You're seriously struggling. There's no doubt about that. Billy Ho Saunders is seriously struggling with some amnesia, because he seems to think that 6 weeks after his fight, the fans in Britain want to hear about how he thinks the point scoring was going for his fight. You having a laugh? Are you having a giraffe? you think that's the biggest talking point on your fight? How many fans had you up winning or losing? This guy's fully lost it. He's got full amnesia. Alvarez knocked the amnesia. Alvarez knocked the context and knocked the history clean out of his barnet for him. Billy Ho Saunders clearly doesn't remember the fight. Because I feel kind of sorry for him, I can't lie. And because the bottom line is, he seems to think that 6 weeks after the fight ended, the biggest talking point in his mind is how many rounds he won. Or how many rounds some deluded fans thinks he won. Does that make sense? Oh yeah, well, the first thing I want to tell the fans is that some people had me 2 rounds up. Wow, this Don really don't remember. This Don really don't remember what happened in the fight. He seems to think it went distance, doesn't he? The way he's talking about how many points he was up and how many rounds he was up. You jacked in the corner. Who cares about how many? And that's the thing. No one had you 2 rounds up. To add insult to injury, this wasn't a case of, well, to be fair to Billy, he was winning 8 rounds he was winning 6 rounds. He was losing 6 rounds and got knocked out and jacked in the corner. How about that? And just before I go on, to give you man some more context, because never mind the actual fight specifics, let's not forget before the fight, or for years, Billy Ho Saunders, 6 weeks after his fight, rocks onto TalkSport, as we've just heard. And all he wants to talk about is the point scoring of the fight. As if, or essentially ignoring the whole history of this fight. Meaning that this wasn't a case of Billy Ho Saunders is a relatively unspoken fighter who minds his own business, and therefore Billy Ho minds his own business, and therefore the first thing the public want to hear from Billy Ho is about how he thinks You know what I'm saying? About how he thinks the fight was scored. How many points he was up when the fight was ended or whatever. Does that make sense? That's not you. You've had a load of controversies which put like I said, the last thing the fans want to hear from you is how many points you delusionally think you was winning at the end of the fight. Oh, you know what? 6 weeks after the fight's ended, I'm going to rock on to Talk Sport. I'm sure the fans can't burst in to hear my delusional opinion on how many rounds I was up. After I've slated Callum Smith, I've slated Daniel Dubois. Don't forget that. Yeah, Billy Ho Saunders for 15 years since his careers began has been extremely outspoken about how big his heart is. Callum Smith came to roll over. Callum Smith came for a payday. I'm coming to win. I'm not like Callum Smith and other fighters who came to roll over against Alvarez. Daniel Dubois, go out on your back. So when you know all of the history of Billy Ho Saunders, yeah, for him to rock onto this interview, and the first thing he wants to kick off with is, some people have me 2 rounds up, some people have me a round up, as if that was the key thing. As if that's what for all of Billy Ho's history, for all of the fight's history, for this particular fight's history, there's 2 key issues here. Number 1, all the rubbish you talked before the fight, for your whole career, demeaning other fighters, talking about how big your heart is. That's the first thing fans wanted to hear off your tongue. Second thing was what actually happened in the fight. But for some reason, again, hats off to MTK Ultra, hats off to Billy Ho Saunders' media team for doing it this way. Oh, you know what, we're going to ignore the things the fans really want to hear, and instead, we're going to go on there and continue manufacturing this narrative of things which are, number 1, irrelevant, but number 2, or more importantly for Billy Ho Saunders' team, they cloud the waters. Because all you've heard from Billy Ho in this clip is, I was 2 rounds up, I was a round up, and most people had me winning a fight. Wow. Not, you know what, I apologise to Callum Smith, I apologise to Daniel Dubois. Imagine if you're a fan and you don't know the wider context. You just think Billy Ho Saunders just had another fight, innit? If you didn't watch the Billy Ho Saunders fight, yeah, you'd just think, look, Billy Ho Saunders, another boxer, and he's just had another fight which he's likely won on points or just lost on points. You wouldn't hear about anything else. Well, you didn't hear about nothing else, did you? He should have rocked onto this interview and said, from the jump, Talk Sport, from the jump, UK listeners, I want to apologise to Daniel Dubois, apologise to Callum Smith. Or, from the jump, Talk Sport, UK listeners, I jacked in the corner, didn't want no more, got bopped on the eye and jumped out of the ring. Those would be the 2 things you should have been starting with. Bottom line, because, again, this fight was controversial because you jacked, and controversial because of all the things you've talked in your life. That's where you start. You start with a controversy. Now, by Billy Ho picking on starting with how many points he allegedly was up, which he wasn't, but you know what I'm saying? By him starting with that, it implies to all naive listeners that was the focus of the fight. The focus wasn't the fact he berated other boxers all of his career. The fact wasn't he jacked in the corner. The biggest thing about this Alvarez fight was that the points was close and most people had him up. And to be fair, I can only hold Billy 50% responsible for what he's saying here, because guess what? The interviewer let him off. It takes 2 to tango. Now, the interviewer could have... To be fair to the interviewer, he did... Yes, he didn't roast him. Yes, he's paid off by the MTK El Trapahan, Don, no doubt. 100% paid off, like IFL TV. Talk Sport, they had this weird little thing with Fish Eyes and MTK. So they're all in bed together. But that said, even though the Talk Sport Don was 100% paid off, he did say to Billy a few times, people are saying you quit, and how do you feel your team pulled you out? Although actually, that in itself could be argued. You can tell 100% is paid off. Because why are you saying, how do you feel about your team pulling you out? His team didn't pull him out. begged Ben to drag him out, yeah? So let's not make out that it's a team thing. Anyway, I'm all over the place here. The bottom line is, yeah, this was, as I explained at the start of the video, this was, no matter what, I don't care what this goofy TalkSport interviewer was watching. The fact of the matter is, Billy Ho Saunders, for his whole career, has talked the greasiest. Now, that interviewer, I assume that interviewer knows it. Or if he doesn't, he will know it, trust me. If you're covering boxing, you know all of Billy Ho Saunders' controversies. You know all the backstory to Billy Ho. You can't miss it. It's been in the papers. So Billy Ho is a controversial cat. And he's said very controversial things to Daniel Dubois. Etc, etc. To Callum Smith. That's what was going into this interview. Or that's what was going into this Alvarez fight. And then, obviously, subsequently, into this interview. And on that background, Billy Ho, or the interviewer, allows Billy Ho to start off by saying, oh yeah, some people had me 2 rounds up, some people had me a round up, as if this was number one, as if it was a close fight, as if we all didn't sit there and watch you, Jack. So number one, as if it was a close fight, and that's what the real, do you know what I'm saying? For all that after all that happened throughout Billy Ho's career and in the actual performance, for Billy Ho to have the audacity, yeah, to start the questioning off, answering about, oh yeah, you see the thing is, some people have told me I was 2 rounds up, some people told me I was a round up, you know. What planet are you on? You should have come out and said, listen, the truth is, don't know about the question you've just asked me, but the honest truth is, I jacked about 2 rounds up. Do you know what I'm saying? It's almost like, I don't know, Callum Smith, for example. If Callum Smith was as delusional as Billy Ho Saunders, yeah, bearing in mind he actually went the distance with Alvarez, yeah, if he was delusional, which is not, but if Callum Smith was delusional, that's how his kind of interview should have been going. Yeah, I lost on points, but you see the thing is, I spoke to some people and they had me 2 rounds up, and if Callum Smith was delusional, he could just about get away with that. But a man who jacked in the corner and begged his team to pull him out in the 8th round has the audacity, yeah, to rock on in his first post-fight interview. And we know boxing isn't a massively mainstream sport, apart from the massive fights like AJ versus Fury. But even then, boxing still, it's not like football. Even football, most sports are somewhat niche in that sense. Guess what? TalkSport listeners, half of them probably didn't even watch the fight. So they hear Billy Ho, not knowing the whole context to it all. Billy Ho rocks up. He's quite smart. It's clearly been, people say AJ's media managed, yeah. Billy Ho has clearly been media managed, because for him to hop on there after all that's happened, yeah, you see, some people had me 2 round up, and others had me 1 round up, and you know, but I'm not gonna, bro, you jacked in the corner. So I have to give a hats off to the MTK Ultra Dons, yeah, the MTK Ultra media team, because they did a cracking job. That there, I almost couldn't believe what I was hearing. I almost thought, wait a minute, is Billy Ho talking about his Chris Eubank fight? No joke. The way Billy Joe was talking, I thought to myself, is that a replay of Billy Ho's Chris Eubank post-fight interview? Do you know what I'm saying? No joke. That's the way it sounded. Alright, Billy's been in a close fight and he's won or he's lost on points. That's how it came across to me. It didn't come across like the man who's been ranting about the size of his heart and ranting about how big his nuts are, just jacked in the corner and didn't do a lick of protesting. And it's almost like, if you understand language, yeah, the way that Billy almost tries to deceive and convince the listeners. He says, oh yeah, some people had me up 2 rounds, some people had it a draw, but you know what, I'm going to put all that to one side. As if he's doing the listeners a favour. The way he uses language, yeah, is as if he's doing the listeners a favour. Oh, you know what, I'm not going to entertain the ones that won, because that's not what's really relevant. What do you mean? As if that's actually in question, do you understand? The way he sets it all up, yeah, is as if the outcome of the fight was in question. You know, some people had me 2 rounds up, some people had it a draw, but you know what? I'm not bothered about that. No one, not one person, Billy, not one person was debating how the fight was going. Do you understand what I'm trying to say here? I hope. Listen, you got to have a high IQ to understand, but I hope everyone gets what I'm going with this, or where I've gone with this. The way he's ranting on about, 2 points up, and some people have me 1 point. No one was like, the only thing, well, trust me, of all the things, yeah, the fans may be questioning, of all the topics you may want to expand on, do you know what topic you don't need to expand on, or you didn't ever need to talk about, was who was winning and who had who upon points. Because that was, no one with a brain was wondering about that. But the way he does that at the start of the interview, it kind of sets the scene. Because guess what? Anyone who hasn't heard it, or anyone who's on the fence, they hear that and say, oh, you know what, yeah, sounds like Billy. And the thing is as well, later on, like seconds later after this clip, which I'm going to analyse in a separate video, but seconds later in this clip, Billy goes on to say, you know, I wasn't really that impressed with Alvarez. So again, imagine for a listener now who didn't watch the fight, they hear Billy Saunders opening up with, yeah, well, some people had me 2 rounds up, some people had me a round up, but you know what? I'm not gonna nitpick there. And to be honest, I wasn't really that impressed. Imagine it. Imagine if you didn't watch the fight. You'd think, yep, this reminds me of Billy Saunders versus Eubank. That's how he's talking, like the fight went. He won, but it was somewhat controversial. But most people had him up. What the you got whooped. In fact, you didn't get whooped. That's a lie. For me to say you got whooped actually somewhat justifies your actions of jacking. You didn't get whooped. You got hit once and hopped out. That's the truth of it. You got hit once and hopped out. It's not, oh, you go. For me, if I keep saying he got whooped, that's a lie. Like, people in the past have been whooped. And being whooped, it makes sense how people get broken from being whooped. It doesn't make sense being hit once and hopping out. And not even hopping out. You didn't even do it dignifiedly. You could have, genuinely, Billy Ho could have been hit and said, kind of gone over there and shook Billy Ho's hand and kind of led from the corner. Does that make sense? Billy Ho could have jacked with dignity. He could have owned it. You know what? I got caught with a good shot, and I'm going to own it. I'm going to be the one to call this fight off, if that makes sense. He didn't do that. He didn't own. He tried to be smart. He tried to be Mr. Marketing, Mr. MTK Ultra. Oh, you know what? I'll get Ben to chew my ear off, and I'll you know what I'm saying? I'll do all the body language to try and get my team to do it, so I can then flip the script. Oh, see, it wasn't me, it was my team. See what I mean? You can't respect that. Everything Billy does has zero respect, because end of the day, what we know now, what we heard from Mark Tibbs, he weren't showing me no signs, which means Billy didn't want no more. He never protested. There was nothing. If Billy had been a man, because ultimately, Billy had made his decision. His decision was, after he got hit once, I don't want to be here no more, and therefore I'm going to do everything in my power not to make this fight go another round. Because Mark Tibbs had already said, you could for another round. I'm sending you back out. At which point, he pulls Ben's head into him and gets Ben to chew his ear off. No doubt, 100%. So Billy had already decided to do everything in his power not to let the fight continue. Now, what a man would do, a man would say, you know what? I'm a man. I don't want no more of this. Let me own this situation. Team, I'm not going to put it on you. I'm going to own it. Because it's my decision. I'm going to stand tall and say, you know what? I don't want no more. Alvarez, fair play to you. It ends up being, Mark Tibbs ends up telling us, oh, I had to pretty much convince Billy Ho to go and shake Alvarez's hand. Billy Ho was going to jack in the corner, blame it all on his team, and then not shake Alvarez's hand. He was going to run off. That's what he was planning on doing. If it wasn't for Mark Tibbs there, that's his plan. That just sums up who Billy is. He's a weasel. An Ab is a bottom feeder. A bottom of, if you did a whole collection of society, Billy would be at the very bottom. And I mean, we've seen his actions over the years, and a lot of his actions have pointed towards him being a bottom. But now it's completely confirmed. He has no character. Because from my opinion at least, all these years, whatever people have said about Billy Ho, for fighters, I hold them naturally in a higher regard. So for example, if someone portrays somewhat bad behaviour outside of the ring, I always let them off and say, you know what, well, we haven't seen him do anything in the ring yet. I believe that's where fighters should be judged, in the ring. For example, if Billy Joe, was being a jackass, making people who are addicted fight and do stupid stuff like that, if he wants to do that, but he holds himself to an extremely high standard in the ring, i.e., Billy is a nuisance to the public and whatnot, but look at himself. He holds himself to that same level. He's a nuisance in the ring. Do you understand? I can rate that. Yes, He doesn't do things that are socially acceptable. But look, he ain't socially acceptable in the ring. He's a beast in the ring. I can work with that. Because that tells me that, listen, this guy's just wired differently. He has no respect for social norms, and in the ring, he has, you know what I'm saying? Throughout history, there's loads of examples of people who are unhinged in real life, and in the ring, they're just gritty dudes. They do things that normal humans, normal kind of, you understand, normal 9-to-5 humans wouldn't do in the ring. If that makes sense. So they've got not an excuse, but that's who they are. Bottom line, Billy, that's not who you are. You acted like a jackass, and then you weaseled out. You're not wired that way. You're not wired that greasy. You are instead a bottom. You're a wannabe weaselly snake, is what you are. Oh, I'm going to act like I'm this way inclined, and then when it gets to it, I'm going to weasel out and not shake the man's hand and not own it. Because for years, how many years have we heard from Billy? Oh, I'm a true man. Oh, I'm a fighting man. Oh, all this, he talks all this stuff about being a true man, and I'll shake your hand. What do you mean? Oh, if I get beaten fair, I'll shake your hand. No word of a lie, how many years have we heard from Billy Ho? All I want to do is get beat fair and square. If I get bit, he doesn't even say beat, he says, if I get bit fair and square, he said, I'll shake your hand. What happened to that then? Because Mark Tibbs had to convince you to go over there. You got hit once, didn't want no more, jacked, and was planning on running off. That's what you was planning on doing. So what happened to all of it? And again, that there's more evidence that this whole thing of... Now, I'm not saying... I don't believe it's all of them. I do believe there are bare-knuckle champion dons, yeah, who do hold themselves to that standard. But I put to you, Billy Ho Saunders is not one of them ones. Billy Ho Saunders is a fake. Yeah, he is not a warrior. He is not a bare-knuckle warrior. Billy Ho Saunders is not a bare-knuckle champion Donny who has principles and sticks and lives and or dies by them. And again, interestingly enough, later on in this interview, he almost suffers from memory loss. I think Alvarez may have hit him. Yeah, his eye wasn't broken even a little bit, but I think he may have had some sort of amnesia thing going on, because Billy, the last 5 weeks have occurred. The way he's acting is as if they don't exist. In this interview later on, he goes on to say, "Oh, I'm willing to lay it all down in the ring." All this, he's saying all the things he was saying before the fight. It's mental. He's done absolutely no. There's been no acceptance. There's been no acknowledgement. And this clip we've heard at the start of this video and the whole interview just blurs that out blatantly. He never accepts he jacked. He never accepts he quit. And the way he explains it, I'm not going to blame my team. One of them ones. He actually puts all responsibility on them and said, yeah, no, he goes, I could be mad with my team, but I could be mad with my team. No joke. He actually thinks his team pulled him out against his will. It's mental to, I started off being a bit mad with my team, but I've kind of got over that now, and I accept they had a job to do, and they were just looking out for me. What the You jerked and you begged him not to send you out there again. Mark Tibbs had already said you're going out for another one, son. You got the new Fruity Tooty 2021 trainer to drag you out. What the going on here? And he started the interview off with, yeah, well, some people had me up 2 rounds, some people had me up a round, some people had it a draw. That is not, listen, that has nothing to do with the fight that occurred. Yeah? Number one, like I said earlier, there was no controversy with the scoring of the fight. So for you to start the interview off talking about the point system, no one had that. That was on no one's radar. No one worried about. You know what I'm saying? No one was worrying about the point scoring of the fight. Number two, of all the things to start off with, of all the controversies, you pick the points. What's wrong with this guy? And I guess to be fair to him, sometimes you can almost regress to a different stage, in as much as I think Billy, there's been so much, or relatively a lot of controversy, so he had to go for the one thing which wasn't controversial. Do you understand? Let me talk about the Let me talk about the points. Who had me up or down in the fight where I quit and didn't make a distance? Have you ever heard someone complain about the points in a fight where they were stopped? What is that? Do you understand? You just been stopped. You just jacked in a fight. Long before the distance. This wasn't a case of, well, YB, he got hit in the last 10 seconds of the last round and he was winning all the rounds. You understand? That would make sense. Well, YB, he was winning 12 rounds and got hit with a lucky punch in the 12th. I get how you may kind of weasel in the points, who had you up on the points and whatnot. You got munched in the 8th round, and most people had you winning barely 1 or 2 rounds off the 8. And the first thing that's on the tip of your tongue is the points part. And again, it's not even just the points, but it's how he does the points. He didn't say some people had me down 4 rounds, some people had me down 5 rounds. If you actually add up what he said, he basically said that of all the things he threw out, it had him up. Because he said, some people had me down by 1 point. Some people had me up by 1 point. Some people had it a draw. Some people had me up by 2 points. So if you actually work it out, he's actually implying, if you worked out if you added up the numbers he said, it works out the average person had him up by 2 points. No joke. He didn't say, he said some people had him up 2 points. Some people had him up a point. He didn't say some people had him down 6 points, did he? which is the reality of it. The reality is he was down 6 points. Not one time did you hear him saying he was down anything more than 1 point. But yet he mentioned that he was up 2 points. Does that make sense? It's like sugarcoating it. Delusionally sugarcoating it. Because anyone who watched the fight, anyone who knows the result, the last thing on their mind, the last thing they want to hear from Billy is, oh, I wonder what your opinion on how the points was going. What's your opinion on the points? It's mental. Absolutely mental. But again, fair play to his media team, because that's probably the right thing to do. Of all the things that have happened, for you to jump on the interview and start ranting and raving about how many points people had you up by. And by the way, that's another thing. Again, the points weren't controversial even a little bit. There was no one. Well, tell a lie, there was. There was some delusional dons. I think, was there? I don't know actually, was there? I'm not sure, but I'm pretty sure there probably was some Billy Ho fans who had him up. In fact, tell a lie, I think that was even Showtime Sports or someone like that. DAZN idiot. One of them dons. Oh yeah, I got Billy up by 1 point. So maybe he does have an argument, but unfortunately you didn't make it the distance. This wasn't a case of Alvarez versus Golovkin, where, wow, you went the distance and it was controversial. You jacked. And that's the long and the short of it. That's it. That's the only thing people want to hear from you is, you jacked. You didn't deliver on any of the things you said. And I've heard from people who gamble, and they said, YB, I lost a whole load of money, not thinking it was possible for Billy Ho to jack. I heard people said, yeah, I put loads of money on for the fight to go the distance because I thought there's no way Billy's going to stop Alvarez. But equally, if Callum Smith can go the distance, Billy with such a big heart, he's at least going to go distance, if not win. So I had people betting on the fight going all 12 rounds, and Billy folds in the 8th and didn't even try for his fans. He didn't even try and push on. He didn't even try and make it. He didn't even try and deliver on the things he's talked about for 15 years. He criticised Daniel Dubois. Daniel Dubois went out again and again and again, getting hit in the same place again and again and again. Billy never got hit on the eye again after the first time. He got hit once and jumped out. He never tried to push through. Whatever Daniel Dubois did or didn't do, he tried to push through. He couldn't take the pain no more. Billy didn't even have any pain. He had some what do they call it? He had some trivial bruising. Some trivial, what would you call it? Bruising. Some trivial damage is what he had. Skin deep. No doubt, 100%. There was nothing structurally wrong with Billy whatsoever. And he couldn't take it. Wait there a minute. You got a little bit of a bruise under your eye and you couldn't take another one of them. Wow. But later on in his... You know what, actually, scrap it. I'm going to get to that in a separate video.